episode 19 of Eye on Horror, and I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing pretty good. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're not happy to be here? It's always a pleasure this time?
I wanted to shake it up.
Shake it up. And speaking of shaking it up, here's your other host, John Correa. How you doing, Correa?
Was that a dig at my love for T Swift?
Actually, it's a dig at your hair right now, I think.
Well,
you got a Jimmy Neutron look.
I don't need to be pretty for you two.
One of these days, we'll record the Skype conversation and send that out as the podcast so people can actually see. Yeah, that's a bad idea.
No.
Really bad idea.
No, because then that requires me to put on pants. And that's one of the things that I like about this, is that I don't need to wear pants. Obviously, I got to wear a shirt. Otherwise, you guys get suspicious about my lack of pants. But, you know, I'm just Winnie the Poohing it all the time.
Just Eye on Horror nudist edition.
Yeah.
Winnie the Poohing it, like Donald Ducking it.
Yeah, I just want to put that imagery in all of our listeners' head, that I'm just sitting here, just Winnie the Poohing, just feeling the breeze.
Any of you who are good with Photoshop, make it happen.
Oh boy.
Winnie the Pooh, Korea. Nothing has really come out. Anything you guys see? Anything cool? I saw. I actually talked about it last episode, but I realized I broke embargo, so I'm going to talk about it again and hope I hit all the same points. I saw the Amityville Murders.
Nice.
Which, when we talked about episodes and episodes ago, I mentioned how the movie I wanted to see was the story of the DeFeo family, which we almost got with Amityville 2: The Possession, but not really. Well, this is the DeFeo family movie, and it's not really what I hoped it would be. It leans real hard into the whole. You know, there's a Sopranos Goodfellas vibe to it, where everybody connected to the fam. Not everybody, but like a lot of the uncles are like, you know, mob guys, and you know they all have their whole hey, what the hey, you know, this, you know, Italian New York accent. So there's this organized crime feel to it, and it also it goes under the. It takes the assumption that the house was haunted before the DeFeos moved in, and it was really voices in his head that made him kill his family. And it's right there in the title, The Amityville Murders. You know how this thing ends up. You know,
Wait, with murder?
Yeah. If you've seen any of the Amityville movies, you know what supposedly caused the haunting is this guy killing his whole family. And
Spoiler.
This kind of shows, yeah, as if the title of the movie isn't.
It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Oh. Well, there's going to be a chainsaw massacre in Texas.
Thought it was just a metaphor.
Yeah, the murder is of the boy's inner child. But it's okay. It's on par with the rest of the Amityville movies. You know, take that however you want to.
It's not as a series as a whole, because I mean we've definitely discussed how it has like one of the longest and most confusing timelines.
Yeah,
it's like up there with James Bond and X-Men of just like, okay, who the fuck is in charge of this now?
Yeah, well, it pretty much is. It's like that. It fits right in line with it. So yeah, that's the Amityville Murders.
As for me, I had a very eventful weekend of screenings. At the American Cinematheque Egyptian Theater, they were doing the world premiere of the new horror documentary, Horror Noire, which is all about the history of horror and its relationship to black audiences and filmmakers. And man, oh man, they had one of the greatest panels I think they've ever had, because let's see, there was Keith David and Tony Todd and William Crane, the director of Blackula, and
personal favorite of mine, to be honest, Blackula.
It is an underrated classic.
Was Jordan Peele on the panel?
Sorry?
Jordan Peele, was he on the panel?
No, he wasn't there, but he is interviewed and featured on the documentary.
I would hope so.
Yeah. And as for that, it was directed by Xavier Bergen, who was there, and it was it was his first feature. But yeah, it was an amazing documentary, and it's just so interesting to see the kind of parallel and connectivity between the history of horror, going back to like the roots of cinema, because they talk about beginning, like Birth of a Nation, and how that related to just both in history of cinema, but also like the monsterization of black people in cinema at that time. And and it covers a variety of topics through like the different decades. Talking about blaxploitation in the 70s and in the 80s, how black people were being featured, but usually as victims in slasher movies. And then going into the 90s with stuff like Candyman and the Night of the Living Dead remake. So it is an incredible documentary, and it just has so many great interviews. And yeah, I could go on and on. It's just it premieres on Shudder next week, and I cannot recommend it enough. Especially if you're a horror fan or just interested in documentaries.
Does anybody actually watch Birth of a Nation outside of film school? I know it's been on like Netflix and it's been on Hulu and stuff, but does anybody just go, you know what? I want to kick back and watch Birth of a Nation, because from a technical standpoint, it's a very important movie. With the nonlinear editing and continuity editing. Just from a filmmaking standpoint, it's very influential, but it is so problematic. You can think of
it's racist. It is extremely racist.
That's an understatement on how racist that fucking movie is.
If you want to watch an example of early, continuity editing, The Great Train Robbery, not Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, because, it was pro-Ku Klux Klan and responsible for its resurgence, so...
Basically, Birth of the Nation, to boil it down, is the KKK saved the day. That's really what it is. Which is
actually maybe that answers my question. I wonder if the people who sit around and watch Birth of a Nation for kicks are like the alt-right people that.
Yeah, and also like remember in Black Klansman, like when they're infiltrating the Klan, like the Klan people just kind of chill and watch Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that does answer my question, I guess.
I mean, I haven't watched like Birth of a Nation outside of academic setting. But I have watched Triumph of the Will outside of it.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, was very problematic. But at the end of the day, Leni Riefenstahl is an amazing filmmaker, and what she did with what she had was incredible. And you definitely need to view it through the eyes. It is propaganda, but I'm not saying, Nazis are good, because that's obviously not the case. It's kind of weird that way you have to be disassociated. Like, no, I do understand that Nazis are bad in this day and age, but you
do. You gotta.
Yeah,
it's a different kind of academic watch for that, because it's technically a well-made movie, but it's more of an example, like I said, propaganda. It's not, whereas Birth of a Nation is literally rah 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 KKK. I mean,
right.
Both are fucked up.
Well, no, and it is good to watch something like Triumph of the Will for context on how to shoot bad guys, because definitely there's a lot of shots in that were replicated in Star Wars, and other films like that. So
yeah, but also this is getting off the topic of horror noir, which again, it's a celebration of black filmmakers and again audiences in relation to that. And like Jordan Peele has some very prominent interviews and talking about Get Out and and kind of helping with a resurgence of diverse voices in filmmaking. And he's got Us coming up, and here's hoping there's more like that. And it was a great series at the Egyptian, because after Horror Noire they did a follow-up screening of Blackula after the movie, and oh my god, I always forget how great Blackula is on its own, because you just think, oh, it's a blaxploitation version of Blackula, but it actually has a pretty emotional story to it, because the whole thing is like Blackula was this African prince who sought out Dracula to try and stop the slave trade, but then he gets turned to a vampire, so it actually is pretty intense. And like there's this great shot in the movie that's like in slow-mo, like this woman is resurrected as a vampire and is like running in slow motion at the coroner, and it's actually pretty freaky, and it kind of reminded me of the nurse shot in Exorcist 3.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also love Blackula because they made Dracula so goddamn racist. Like,
yeah.
Just like the whole transformation scene where he turns him and he's just like, yeah, now you're a creature of the night and I'm going to name you Blackula. And it's
and
just
he does
like,
use the N-word.
Yeah, he does. And it's very interesting because it shows that not only is Dracula very racist, but he's very not creative when it comes to naming things. It's like, oh, I turned you and you're black. You're now Blackula.
Yeah, no, he's Dracula is just a huge dick in that movie, because then he also seals Blackula's wife in the chamber he sealed in and like starves her to death. So yeah, just Dracula, total asshole in that movie. But Blackula is cool.
Yeah. And then you got the sequel, Scream Blackula, Scream, with fan favorite Pam Grier, who's just like the best when it comes to if you need someone badass in your film, you hire Pam Grier.
Yeah. And then last night they continued the Horror Noire theme screening with an amazing double feature. And honestly, I'm surprised nobody thought of this before. It was Tales from the Hood and Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, which were directed by Rusty Cundiff and Ernest Dickerson, respectively. And just like, I love those movies. Well, I mean, like Tales from the Hood is an anthology. Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight is, based on an anthology. It's like an extended Tales from the Crypt episode. But they actually work very well off of each other, and it was really cool. They had both directors there between the shows to talk about, the production of both movies and, and where they're at now. And yeah, I mean, there was a sizable audience, and, those movies really made an impact. And yeah, like Rusty Cundiff was even saying, like with Tales from the Hood, it's annoying how relevant the movie still is today. Yeah, like that, like the racist politician guy whose slogan like is running, and his slogan is an original American.
He was Native American? What? Did either of you guys check out Velvet Buzzsaw?
Yes.
Not yet.
On Netflix? It's something else. Dan Gilroy, I love Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is one of my favorite movies of the 21st century. And Roman J. Israel Esquire, I mean, it was all right. I didn't hate it as much as everybody else, but it was not, I didn't love it as much. But, I mean, Gilroy is back with Velvet Buzzsaw. It's not for everybody. It's kind of weird and artsy, and it's got this weird pace to it. But at the end, it's almost like a slasher movie where the killer is this cursed artwork.
Yeah.
It's I mean, some of the death scenes are incredible.
Yeah, like, I reviewed the movie for iHorror, and like, the comparison I made was that it reminded me a lot of Phantasm, especially because, there's that giant silver sphere, although it doesn't, brain anybody, but don't want to get into it. But, yeah, no.
And it's also a lot bigger than the Phantasm.
Yeah. But, yeah, no, it kind of reminded me of Phantasm because, it had that dream logic edge to it, but, also it was... a satire rooted in the art world. So it's just kind of, it's outside people's perspectives, but I still thought it was very funny. And like a lot of those elaborate kill scenes, kind of had me on edge because, you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. So in a lot of ways, it also kind of brought me back to Argento, like the elaborate set piece kills, the kind of dream logic to it. And lots of colors. Very beautifully shot.
It's got a great cast, too, because he's Jake Gyllenhaal from Nightcrawler is back with him, and also Renee Russo, who I think, is that Dan Gilroy's wife? I feel like they're married.
I don't know.
But anyway, she's back in it, and also Toni Collette pops in for a little bit. It's got a pretty cool, like...
And John Malkovich.
Yeah, Malkovich, he's in it too. It's got a whole bunch of those, like if you don't look at the IMDb before you hit play on it, you'll, just face after face pops up. Some of them you'll know the names, some of them you'll be like, wait, I know that, but it's It's a fun one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like it's still worth a watch, even if you're a bit wary of art horror, because it does get pretty gory and freaky. So I think horror fans should be satisfied. And a lot of satire, again, while ruining the art world, is still funny on its own. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal had a lot of great one-liners. Like he has that bit where it's like, the critic is God in the art world. He's just so pompous.
I have seen a lot of memes coming out of that.
Yeah.
Of some of the things Gyllenhaal has said in it.
Yeah, it's Bird Box all over again.
Have you seen the memes? The memes about the Fire Festival doc? They all revolve around that one guy.
Oh, God. I know what you're talking about.
For good. They did start some GoFundMes, so.
Oh, boy.
I haven't watched any of those. I've been getting so many Blu-rays in the mail. All my pre-orders are coming in, and I had, some really standout ones. Like Criterion just put out 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days. I know I fucked up that title, but that movie is one of the best out there. I also got some Scream Factories. They just re-released Cobra and 10 to Midnight, which are
nice,
great, like action with a bit of slasher in them, especially 10 to Midnight. But the real standout is Arrow Video just put out a new special edition for Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak.
Yeah,
which this is a gorgeous fucking set. Like from the boxing to the all new special features, including like a feature length making of. Like, if you're a fan of gothic horror or Del Toro at all, it's definitely a worthwhile set to get, just out of its sheer beautiful. Plus, it's a fantastic film. I rewatched it last night and still taken in with just Del Toro's how he always puts the light with the dark. He puts beautiful with like the violent and the gory, and I feel like Crimson Peak was like his epitome of that style. Just everything's either like a beautiful dress with like beautiful landscape, beautiful white snow that's like being seeped into with this red crimson clay. Just awesome.
I wasn't a huge fan of the movie Crimson Peak, but it probably has the most violent death scene of that entire year.
Oh yeah,
it's got the bathroom one.
Oh yes.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, Jim Beaver. Sorry, bud. And I also didn't realize it because Lindsay and I watched that, and then earlier in the week we watched A Simple Favor. So there was a bit of a theme with our last two films. If you haven't seen either, I'm not going to say because it's major spoiler, but...
and also, funny you mentioned 10 to Midnight, which was actually shot, where they had that scene shot at the Arrow Theater in Santa Monica, where I work. And I should mention this, we do that sub-series Cinematic Void where we screen genre movies, and for the 3rd anniversary, they're doing a triple feature of, I swear to God, Phantasm, 3 O'Clock High, and 10 to Midnight, back to back to back later this month. I forget what exact day, but I think it's like February 20-something, but it should be a good time. And it's always funny when we screen movies that were shot at the theater, in the theater, like we did Sleepwalkers and Donnie Darko, which were also had bits there.
What part of 3 O'Clock High was shot there?
That wasn't shot there. It was just It was just 10 to Midnight. They're just doing Phantasm, 3 O'Clock High, and 10 to Midnight, which also happened to be shot there.
Because I didn't think 3 O'Clock High, I mean, it all is the school.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was anything that wasn't the school.
It's just a good movie.
Oh, it's a great movie. I love 3 O'Clock High.
Yeah, that's a great triple feature. That's almost as good as when they did the double feature of Streets of Fire with Last Action Hero on 70mm. That was the best double feature I've ever been to.
That was a good time. And in terms of Blu-rays, I actually just got some new stuff from Vinegar Syndrome. They just re-released There's Nothing Out There.
I love There's Nothing Out There. Can I just say
too.
that before you move on? That is one of my favorite horror comedies of all time.
Yeah, it's so underrated because it was basically one of the first real meta horror movies.
Yeah.
Because it had that guy who actually saw the horror movies, and they go to the cottage by the pond instead of cabin by the lake. So, yeah, it's really something I feel a lot of horror fans need to see just to kind of know the roots of this type of stuff.
And then he's minor spoiler, he escapes at one point by swinging on the mic boom.
Yeah, and
to get
set to like a faux Indiana Jones music cue. Yeah, Rolf Konevsky's first movie, and like he really knocked it out of the park with that. And it's a 2K transfer for Vinegar Syndrome. And aside from that, let's see, also got Uninvited, the Graydon Clark killer cat inside of another cat horror movie on a boat with Clu Gulager and George Kennedy. That's a fun one. And they actually managed to make a 4K transfer of that one, which is crazy. And the other one is Bloody New Year, the last movie by British horror filmmaker Norman J. Warren, who did Terror and Seminoid, and it's this really bonkers like kind of supernatural horror movie set on an island that these British kids end up on, and there's a lot of like weird time travel stuff. So it was pretty fun. So, you know, just Vinegar Syndrome just knocks it out of the park again.
I love how Vinegar Syndrome, they make these elaborate transfers and additions of movies that have no business having transfer. Like, there's Nothing Out There is a great example, but also they did both the Gorman Bechard movies, Psychos in Love and Disconnected. Those movies have no business looking that good, but Vinegar Syndrome says, hold my beer.
Yeah.
And like...
That's their mission.
Yeah.
And I think it's great because we're living in the best time for that to happen. I mean, just look at last year with Night of the Living Dead. How many editions have been out? How like... You saw all the fanboys complain, it looks too good. It's not like how I heard it. It's like, well, this is how it's supposed to look.
I didn't see anybody complain about it. Anything you've bought up to that point has been a bootleg.
Yeah.
The criterion is the and you're talking to someone who has probably bought that movie a dozen times over my lifetime. I mean, on VHS, DVD, and that's not including the first time I ever saw it. I taped it off HBO. So, I mean, that's the last edition of that I'm ever going to have to buy. And I love the fact that I will never have to buy Night of the Living Dead again.
I mean, I'm still keeping my shitty VHS copy that like is super worn out and like is in super rough shape just for nostalgia effect. But yeah. The criterion is the end all for Night of the Living Dead.
And while we're on the subject of zombies, I would like to use this opportunity to segue into talking about Resident Evil 2, the remake. Because
how is that?
Oh my god, it is one of the best survival horror video games I've played in years. I talked about, playing the demo last time, but, it was that weird thing where it's like you could only play for 30 minutes and then, poof, it's gone forever. So... which was brilliant because like I played that and I pre-ordered the next day, and I have not been disappointed by the full game because it's like you're dropped into Raccoon City and zombies are enemies, but this is not a run and gun situation like because you can't just shoot them in the head and they're dead. Like it takes a few shots and like you're in this labyrinth like police station with all these puzzles and stuff, and there are all these other monsters in there like the Licker, and there's this one enemy called Mr. X is like this monster Terminator guy who's dropped in, and like he chases you throughout the entire level, and you can only escape him in certain rooms, but the rest of the time, like if he sees you, he'll just be like a Terminator pacing toward you, and if he finds you, he will beat your ass to death. And back on memes, there's actually been this funny one where somebody modded it so like Mr. X's theme has been replaced with X gonna give it to you.
Did you say there's a villain called the Licker?
Yeah, it's this...
Is that like licking with a tongue, Licker?
Well, that's the thing. It's like this horrible flayed monster with like giant claws and like exposed brain, and it's got this whip-like tongue that it uses to grab you and stab you.
Yeah, they're staples of the Resident Evil franchise. They're in like most of the movies.
Yeah.
But I did have a pause moment where he said, "Is the enemy the Licker? Are we talking to like a Trailer Park Boys character right now?"
Oh
like,
god.
I am the Licker.
Oh, God. In game, like, the Licker is blind, so your best strategy is to try and slowly tiptoe around it if you encounter it, because if you don't, like, you gotta spend ammo to try and kill it. Which is the other thing, too. It's pure survival horror. You gotta conserve ammo, you gotta conserve health, you gotta kind of mark where you're at and solve all these puzzles. So, yeah, Capcom really outdid themselves, because it's a remake, but it's really a reimagining, because, like, everything's kind of done from scratch. It's got the familiar elements, but it's something entirely new, so even fans of the old one are going to be surprised. And man, it made me jump out of my seat so many times, just either like zombie just pops up that I didn't see, or like I walk into a room and like there's liquor, so like I can't make a sound, otherwise they will rip my ass to death. So it's just very intense.
I'm sorry, every time you say liquor, I'm just imagining like someone running, and then I went in the room and there was booze and I had to run,
It is kind of an funny name for a monster, but Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic survival horror game, and in general just one of the best video games I think this year.
All right. Well, let's move on. What do we got for a subgenre of the episode?
All right. Well, we are recording on Super Bowl Sunday, so
is that today?
It is today. I can't believe it either.
I mean, I can. My phone's been blowing up this entire day for my family because we're from New England, so
same.
You can guess who they're rooting for.
Oh yeah. And it is a funny conflict because we're from New England and we're living in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I was thinking about being that obnoxious, New England fan today, but I'm taking it easy.
Well, I live in an alternate universe where the Super Bowl is actually the Chiefs and the Saints, because the refs didn't determine the outcomes of the games. But anyway, let's go on with our subgenre.
Yeah. So off of that, I wanted to talk about sports horror, or this horror movies that involve sports, because we talked a little bit before the show, and actually, it's funny because like the more you think about it, the more it kind of comes up. Just kind of athletics and horror. Like first thing that comes to mind for me, there aren't a whole lot of just horror movies centered entirely around sports, but there are a lot with those elements, like The Faculty. Like that came to mind because Robert Patrick is the evil coach or possessed coach, and there's an entire extended segment where the entire football team is they're possessed or infected by the aliens, and the football team is like chasing after I forget his name, but they're chasing after one of the characters. And yeah, just that great shot where like he's inside the school bus and all the football players are like pounding on the windows.
Yeah, or just that one shot where they're all standing in the rain and they got the tentacle things coming out of their faces. That was awesome. Such an underrated Rodriguez film.
It really is. And yeah, and that's the thing, like the football game was a plot point because like their whole plan was the football players were going to infect the other football team, mid-tackle and stuff, so that then they would infect their school and it would spread.
And thank God for designer drugs, because that's really what saved the day. So remember, kids, when the greasy kid who offers you designer drugs in a pen, he's going to save you.
Snort that shit.
Be nice to Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Josh Hartnett.
Yeah.
What about the movies where it's not really a sanctioned sport, but like The Most Dangerous Game? Where
hunting humans.
They treat hunting people as sport, or Battle Royal, where they just put all the kids on an island and say, fight, kids, and then they watch,
Yeah, or just extreme versions of sports we already know, like Death Race 2000, which has like the greatest opening to any race ever, when Frankenstein just like drops his glove, turns around, and runs over the priest. Like,
okay, yeah,
it's such a good movie.
And then there is, and I know Korea and I are like, who's going to say it first? Who's going to say it first? Let's say it at the same time. Rollerball.
Yeah, fucking love rollerball. It's like,
I love rollerball too.
The best of every sport ever and make it better,
but also to the death.
Oh man, you got bowling, you got roller derby, you got football. You got fuck it. Let's just throw a motorcycle in there because fuck you. This is rollerball.
When my wife used to skate with one of the roller derby leagues down here, and we had a party at one point, and a lot of the roller girls were here. And for some reason, rollerball just happened to be on TV, so we were watching it. And at one point, one of the girls goes, "Why don't we get motorcycles?"
That movie's so brutal, though. Like, just that one scene, because they keep showing the ball coming out, and it comes out hard, and it's like a hard metal ball that they have to, like, grab and stuff. So when it comes out of the chute, it comes out wicked fast. And the second they show it, it's like, the old theater trick where if a gun is introduced in the first act, it's going to be used in the third. And someone's going to get taken out when it comes out of the thing. And you just see that one dude with his headlamps right in front of it, and you're like, no, no, no. And then right in the face. Destroyed by the ball. It's fucking awesome.
The rollerball also go like to what I was joking about, the how the Super Bowl should be the Chiefs and the Saints. Rollerball kind of speaks to that whole corrupt league thing too, because What it is there's basically the Tom Brady of the sport in rollerball is the James Caan character, and they're trying to get him to retire. That's basically the crux of all of the non-rollerball stuff. So they keep making the sport harder for him to play so that he does retire. Like, they keep basically taking rules away and making it more brutal until finally the last match is no rules and you play until no one's alive.
Yeah. It becomes like an all for, like, death for all, and it's fucking awesome. Also, not angry about the James Caan Tom Brady connection. Not upset at all, because you know
James
what?
Caan is a badass in that movie.
Both are badass, beautiful men. So you know what? I'll allow it.
And did you guys see the remake of Rollerball?
Oh my god.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I saw it once and then I flushed it from my brain.
Okay. First of all, you're gonna have the guy from American Pie try to be as cool as James Caan. No. I'm sorry. And that's no.
Off of Rollerball and kind of going back to the Rodriguez stuff, actually there is a deaf sport in the upcoming Alita Battle Angel movie, because I'm a fan of the original manga and I've seen enough from the previews and trailers and stuff that they've got this sport in the movie called Motorball, which was pretty much inspired by Rollerball, but people are cyborgs in it, and it's kind of a race too. So basically, you got all these cyborgs on wheels going through this track, and they're allowed to smash and kill each other with like all kinds of weapons and stuff. So I've seen a bit from the clips and trailers, and it looks astounding on the big screen. So I'm pretty stoked.
Well, speaking of sports that are invented for movies, what was it? Escape from New York, where Snake had to run from one side of the court to the other and make baskets. Like,
oh no, that was Escape from L.A.
Escape from L.A. Okay, I knew it was one of those. I knew it was Snake Plissken doing it.
Just think of it this way: was Snake Plissken doing something really stupid? Then it's Escape from L.A.
No.
No, that was a fun thing because
they had him surf at the end of the fucking movie.
That was dumb. Yeah, when he's surfing down, because wasn't he surfing down Sunset or something? It was actually a street.
Yes.
Well, actually, I think that was midway through the movie.
Did.
Yeah, Tsunami with what's his name?
It Peter Fonda?
Yeah, there was that surfer guy. Remember?
Yeah, I think was it Peter Fonda?
It was Peter Fonda.
Okay.
It was Peter Fonda was the other surfer guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to defend Escape from LA so much back in the day, and it's just I can't anymore.
It's still cool in my book.
It's still
I'm
fun
cool
to
with
watch, but
yeah. But still back at it, like that. Although it is worth mentioning that basketball thing, because Kurt Russell actually made those shots. That was not like staged or anything.
Well, Kurt Russell's an amazing all-around person who can do anything. He was a baseball player before, right? Because his dad owned like a minor league team or something, and they were like, there's a great documentary about it on Netflix.
And also, speaking of basketball, there's the greatest basketball shot of all time in Deadly Friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where they took out
Fratelli.
Yeah. But that's my question is, like, there's not a whole lot of, like, sports horror, but sports ends up in horror a lot. Even, looking at, like, famous death scenes, like Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It's not exactly a sports horror film, but you got that famous shower scene, or there's just, like, something about athleticism and horror that goes together. I mean, fucking even Jason Voorhees, his iconic look is having a hockey mask on. So I wonder what the psychology behind sports and horror, or is it just the fact that, like, a lot of sports feature, items like that could be used as weapons,
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was just thinking back to The Faculty, because there's that exchange between Elijah Wood's character and Robert Patrick's character, where he's like the coach, and he's asking Elijah Wood, just like, why aren't you training? And Elijah Wood's just like, I don't feel like it's worth running unless something's chasing me. And yeah, it's just, I guess. With sports and horror, is that it's part of what horror does. It's subverting the expected, because a lot of sports are considered all American. So just like just so competitive. Like, what if the competition is raised up to the level of fighting to the death? We could talk about before with like Rollerball and Battle Royale. And there's also an element of that in the Purge movies, because, there's, like in Purge Anarchy, the second one, there's that whole game where, like, those rich people buy people so that they can hunt them in that warehouse.
Well, and also the Purge, the TV series, there's the gauntlet that they make, they catch guys and make them run. So I think some people in the Purge universe take advantage of the Purge for their own sport, basically.
Yeah.
And isn't that, I guess that's kind of a basis of a lot of those fears, is like you have these organized, it's just like the corrupt organization, and getting it to that new extreme, because we're always hearing about how sports are getting more and more dangerous with concussions and what have you. So what if we just went, fuck it, let them kill each other,
All right, I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to our topic, which is a bit of a sad one. We're going to pay tribute. In case you haven't heard, which by now you all probably should have, the great Dick Miller passed away, I believe, January 30th. So it was a few days ago from when we were recording this, and it'll be about a week and a half from when you guys hear this. And Dick Miller is one of those guys, like Bill Paxton, I think, where he seems to show up in everything. And a lot of times you won't even remember that he's in a movie until, you put Terminator on and you're like, holy crap, that's Dick Miller, or, you put Gremlins on and you're like, hey, it's Dick Miller. He's one of those, because also a lot of his roles he did, he was only in for like a scene or two. He was just like a real bit player part. But he killed those bit parts that he did. He was a great everyday man. That's what it comes down to, because all of his roles, or a large majority of his roles, were an everyday man, and he only had like a few starring roles, right?
Yeah.
He was one of Roger Corman's muses back in the day, which also translated to him being one of Joe Dante's main guys too, because they came from the same school. But when he when I think of Dick Miller, I always think of the Corman movie A Bucket of Blood, which is he actually plays a character. You'll hear the name frequently, Walter Paisley, who is I hesitate to say he's an artist, because he becomes an artist in the movie, but he basically, A Bucket of Blood is set in like that beatnik art scene, and he his landlady's cat gets stuck in his wall, and he accidentally kills it. So then he pours plaster on it and calls it art. And then he's touted as the greatest new artist on the scene.
So he has to keep killing people for his art. Yeah.
He has to keep making things like that, or else, he won't, because that's what he wants to be as an artist. But he's not, and that's the scene he hangs out in. But he didn't have any success until he kills his cat. But that one is one of the rare movies where he actually was a lead, because he usually was basically, if not just a supporting actor, he was just a single scene bit player. Like, he'll be a janitor somewhere, or he'll be a pawn shop clerk.
Yeah, I'm actually, looking through his IMDb profile, and yet there are so many movies where he's just, night manager, repairman, trucker. Yeah. So like he was I guess he was a very blue collar character actor, because just a lot of his roles were just kind of everyday jobs.
I think that's why he's credited in so many things as Walter Paisley, because Walter Paisley was his character in A Bucket of Blood, and is the character in the remake and also the theater stage production of it. But I think that as he moved on to other movies, if he was in a role that didn't have a name, it would be like Old Detective. I think some filmmakers would just call that character Walter Paisley because it was Dick Miller playing him, so he's credited in his credits. There's probably 10 or 12 roles where he plays Walter Paisley,
like Chopping Mall.
Yeah. Chopping Mall, he's a janitor, but he's called Walter Paisley.
Yeah, because we are all Walter Paisley, really, in our own way.
Yeah,
but I really want to talk about The Burbs, because he was first of all, I love The Burbs. That's such a great movie. Bruce Dern is just like at his most Dernest. Well, second most Dernest after The Driver, but
and a pre-crazy Corey Feldman.
There's actually a clip that resurfaced where it's behind the scenes, where it's them like about to do a shot and Corey Feldman's fucking around like singing or something, and Dick Miller just tells him to shut the fuck up. We're trying to act here. Like legit, just shuts him down hard.
Okay. We're trying to act.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
Wow.
But he always brought like that. Not only just like a realness to his characters, which is why I think he is able to play the everyday man so well, but he always like brought like something to it where that's, and I think that's why he is such a, oh, that guy, because he just blends in so well. But his characters always stand out for a little bit. Like it's Dick Miller when he pops up.
And he also never seems to take himself too seriously in these movies either. Like when Dick Miller is in a movie, like even if his only scene in the movie is him getting killed, he loved showing up that day and he loved being in the movies.
Yeah. Last night I was saying I was at a screening of Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, where he has a pretty prominent role as Uncle Willie. And at the Q&A, somebody asked about his Ernest Dickerson, about working with Dick Miller, and he was talking about when he was working in pre-production and trying to figure out actors for roles, he was looking for the books. And Dick Miller stood out to him because he'd seen him in so many horror movies and stuff before, when he was growing up, and so he wanted somebody that people would be like, oh, hey, it's that guy. And so he brought on Dick Miller and said he was a great guy to work with, very down to earth. So yeah, it just sounded like he was he was a good guy and people like to work with him.
Have either of you guys seen his documentary? It's actually it's called
list.
That Guy Dick Miller.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah,
I haven't seen
that
it
line
either.
So many times.
We've called him That Guy like 3 times so far, and that's the name of it. That's the perfect way to describe him. That Guy Dick Miller. I haven't seen the documentary. Have you seen it, Kriya?
It's really good. Like,
okay.
It just covers all the bases of his career, and I think the best way to describe it is if you ever went to a convention and Dick Miller was there, because his whole thing was That Guy Dick Miller. Mm-hmm. And he was always the nicest guy. Like I've only recently started going to conventions over the last few years, and he was at every single one, and he was always just super nice. And I just remember one time I didn't have any money left, and I just wanted to say hi. I was like, hey, Dick Miller, it's really nice to meet you. Sorry I can't afford a photo or anything. And he was still really nice. Like, he was just like, oh, thanks. Shook his hand and parted ways. But, like, he always made time. And it was always interesting because he, like, especially over the last, decade or so, he had really long hair, which is not how I remember Dick Miller. He always had that same, like, haircut for most of his roles. And so it was always had to do a double take, like, wait, is that Dick Miller? With his hair up in a ponytail and everything.
The conventions I always see him at, they always seem to put him off to the side, too, which always seemed weird to me because you would think that Dick Miller would be a draw. But also, they always seem to put Kane Hodder off to the side, too. So maybe... I don't know why they would... The guy who'd always be in the middle of the conventions would be the guy from Human Centipede 2.
Yeah.
So maybe the outskirts are the better tables, maybe.
Well, he was such a staple, because he had done so many of the conventions and so many of the things, it kind of becomes that, well, I already have his autograph, so they always put like the new people or something front and center. But he's not only a staple in the films, but he's a staple in conventions and just for genre fans in general.
The busiest table I've ever seen at a convention was for I'm totally blanking on her name, Nancy Thompson, Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah.
I feel like her movie, that I Am Nancy documentary, had just come out, so there was probably a big run on it. But maybe she doesn't do many conventions, but that was the longest line that I've ever seen at a convention to get stuff signed. Anyway, on to Dick Miller again.
Yeah. Actually, I saw him at conventions, too. I wouldn't say he was put off to the side, but yeah, that was the thing, he just kind of blended in. He was just there.
He was that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Dick Miller.
Let's rattle off some movies that he was in. Like, okay, we said Chopping Mall. He was in Night of the Creeps.
Oh, yeah, Night of the Creeps.
Yes.
He was in The Howling.
Yeah.
The Howling.
Yeah, and he had a pretty integral role in The Howling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in, like, lots of the old, like, Gremlins, Piranha, any of the Joe Dante, the
Gremlins
Burbs.
2, when he throws that one gremlin into the cement and it turns into a gargoyle, and his character finally has that moment of retribution.
Yeah.
a lot of the old Corman, Little Shop of Horrors.
The Terror?
Yeah, The Terror.
With Jack Nicholson.
Not Mask of Red Death. Was it... he was in one of the Poe cycle ones.
I know he was in The Satellite. That was one that always stuck out of his IMDb that I have yet to watch yet, though.
And also, I was rewatching Matinee. He's in that.
Yeah.
Matinee, yeah.
Fantastic in Matinee.
Yeah. And it's funny because it is kind of meta because in Matinee he's so he's playing an actor who's playing a fake distraught citizen because the whole thing, John Goodman's character Warren Woolsey is making faux outrage for his movie Man so that he can stir up attention and controversy. So that was pretty fun. And there's that bit where he's drinking a fancy cocktail.
Oh yeah, he's also Joe in Small Soldiers. I don't know if that's a significant movie for you guys, but for me growing up, was.
I loved Small Soldiers.
Oh man, basically every Joe Dante film, he at least had a bit part up to the Hole and Burying the Axe.
Yep. He was even in Looney Tunes Back in Action, where he stops Brendan Fraser.
Yes, he was.
Because he's a security guard at the studio lot.
He's also very heavily involved with the Batman and 90s DC animated ones. He was in Mask of the Phantasm. He had a small voice part in that. He was in a few episodes.
Also, he was in Justice League.
He was Foss Knight in the Flash live action 90s show.
Okay.
Which was a favorite of mine growing up. I remember watching the VHS tapes of that, renting them. It just goes on. We kind of pause it because we're all looking at his IMDb and just going,
so many to
holy
choose
shit,
from.
What is he not in?
Yeah, we're scrolling through, and he's in Premature Burial is the Poe cycle one that he was in that I was struggling with. But War of the Satellites that you were talking about?
Yeah, the Satellites, yeah.
It Conquered the World.
He also was in the Twilight Zone movie as Walter Paisley again. Yeah.
Because that was a Joe Dante segment.
Yep.
So Joe Dante, I have a feeling that he was a package deal with Dante.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he was in Clueless.
The TV show.
The TV show, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in Death Race 2000, which we were already talking.
Oh, yeah, of course he's in Death Race 2000. Who wasn't in Death Race 2000, though? He even had Stallone in that.
Big Bad Mama and Crazy Mama.
That's true.
Hollywood Boulevard as another Walter Paisley.
Yeah, it's not as brought up as much, but he did appear on a lot of TV shows. He's on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Sister.
Tales from the Dark Side.
Yep.
Yeah, he was... the Joe Dante connection.
It looks like he was a regular on Fame. He was in 30 episodes on Fame.
Wow.
I mean, who didn't like Fame back then, right?
Hey, Amityville 92, It's About Time. We've talked about that one.
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite of the sequels. I forgot he was in that.
That's when they stopped giving him numbers and they just say, this one's in 92.
And back on the Joe Dante connection and TV, he was in Erie, Indiana.
Yep. He also, I don't know about you guys, but I went through a period where I watched a lot of the psychedelic films that came out in the 60s, and he was in The Trip as Cash.
Yeah, he was just one of those guys who was everywhere. And, he would show up just for seconds in these movies.
Yeah. A good example, I feel, is Terminator. Because which is also funny because Bill Paxton's also in that, but yeah,
for seconds.
There's that whole thing though, is that he plays the dude running the gun shop, and he's showing
I may close early.
and he's showing the Terminator all the guns and stuff, and even though it's a small part, it was very memorable.
Yeah. All of them. You want all of them? All right, you're gonna pay for cash for that.
Yeah. So you can't put those bullets in the gun.
Right.
Yes, I can.
And he did.
Well, that's another James Cameron. That's another guy who came out of the Corman Film School. So I think whenever any of those Corman guys needed a charismatic bit player, Dick Miller was the number one call.
He was that guy.
Yeah,
Dick Miller
was that guy.
But I mean, it's great because Dick Miller's legacy is going to live on. I mean, he's always going to be popping up. He has over 182 credits. I think Jacob, before we recorded, said that he was in that Hanukkah horror movie that we were talking about a few episodes ago, right?
He's coming. And I think it might be his last role. Let me say. The best part though is that his character in the new Hanukkah movie is Rabbi Walter Paisley.
Which is such a great note to end on. Doesn't matter how good the film is, just the fact that his career ends, because he was in a bunch of stuff before Bucket of Blood, but that was like his like big like kind of blow up. Like I mean, he never really blew up, but like that was his big part and like what he became known for after. So it's beautiful that it ends on that note, which is great.
I tell you, his passing is pretty much going to guarantee that my next dog is going to be named Walter Paisley.
Yeah. And that's going to be when I make my transition from making tribute parody heavy metal to country, reverse Garth Brooks. That's going to be my country singing name is Walter Paisley.
Walter Paisley? Nice. People can, watch his movies themselves. We're just going through the IMDb now, but the thing with Dick Miller is I always felt like he was always going to be around, kind of like Harry Dean Stanton, and now they're both gone. Which who's gonna be the new Harry Dean Stanton or Dick Miller? Who's going to be the guy who pops up in everything? We don't even have Bill Paxton anymore. Who else is there that seems to be in damn every movie? The face. You're like, oh, that guy. I don't think we have that guy anymore.
Where is our everyday man big character actors? That's who those three men are. They embodied the everyday man, but they would always elevate it too. I mean, Bill Paxton in Streets of Fire was such a goofy character that only Bill Paxton could pull off.
In Weird Science, who else could have been Chet in Weird Science?
Who else could have been the neighbor Blake who's saying that there's gremlins in their tractors drunk? And
who else could have been Uncle Willie?
Yeah.
Who else could have been the janitor in Chopping Mall? Who else could have gotten electrocuted like Dick Miller?
I think one of the few surviving actors that can pull that off would be Michael Rooker. Because he's done a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah,
and you can't mention Harry Dean Stanton without me at least trying to do an impression of him in Red Dawn. Avenge me, avenge me. There's no time for crying, boys.
Nice. All right, have we milked that guy Dick Miller? Anything else?
Poor choice of words.
Phrasing.
So much.
Yeah.
Have we reached the end of our Dick Miller tribute?
Yeah, I guess. Kind of to sum things up, it's just he was. He was very relatable because he was a down to earth guy. He played a lot of down to earth characters.
Yeah. Go watch Dick Miller movies. I'll bet you own at least 5 in your collection.
Yeah.
Because he was in all sorts of cool stuff.
Essential Dick Miller performances are definitely the Gremlins movies, The Burbs, and Bucket of Blood.
Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight.
Demon Knight as well, yes.
I mean, Demon Knight is just an essential anyways. Like, how the fuck have you not seen Demon Knight? I'm judging all of you listening right now who haven't seen Demon Knight. Just fucking watch it. My boy Billy Zane just killed it.
In every sense.
Yeah.
And it was, and I think, I remember reading somewhere, like there was an interview with Dick Miller and he said Demon Knight was one of his favorite roles because he was surrounded by booze and boobs.
Let's let that be where we leave off on Dick Miller. Let's get out of here. Our theme song is Restless Spirit, so go rock with Restless Spirit. Our artwork is Chris Fisher, so go and look at his artwork and hire him to do some artwork for you because he does great work. Where can we find you guys on the Twitters? Jacob?
You can find me at Jacob Davison _. That is at JACOBDAVISON _.
And Korea?
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIANBBQ. And for a few more plugs, don't forget to check us out iHorror News on Twitter. Check out the Facebook pages, Ion Horror and iHorror. Stardust, we're on that. Don't forget, me and Kelly are posting, not daily, but fairly frequently on that. And Jacob, didn't iHorror just put out a new short that you wrote?
It most certainly did.
Let's not leave without mentioning that.
Thanks for reminding me. Just too caught up in Dick Miller. But yeah,
Dick Miller was in this short? No, never mind.
Oh God. But anyway, yes, iHorror did release a new short called Monstrum. It was directed by the website's founder, Anthony Pernica, and I actually wrote it.
Yeah.
Yay. If you like our Eye on Horror Facebook page, you may have seen it in your feed because we posted a link to it when it went live. So you may have already seen it, but if you haven't, you should. And me, you can find on Twitter, backtracking, at Cinema Ferrite. That's Ferrite like verite, but with fear, so it's Fearite. And you can find all three of us at iHorror, at Eye on Horror, any of those places. So if you disagree with us thinking that Dick Miller is one of the greatest character everymen of cinematic history, actually, if you disagree with us, we don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
this is the one time.
This is the one time we don't want to hear your negative opinions. Dick Miller was a gift.
If you do agree with us and you want to share a story or just, hey, if we didn't give enough love to one of your favorite performances, let us know on Facebook. That's where you can find us. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Hopefully not a tribute to someone who passed, because we've been having too many people pass, and it hurts. It hurts. So until next time, I'm James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
And I'm Jonathan Correa.
Keep your eye on horror.